Okay, this is the MacBook Neo, Apple's cheapest laptop ever. On paper, it's almost too good to be true. Premium build quality, solid battery life, plus a display as bright and sharp as the double the price MacBook Air, all for $600. This sounds like it's instantly gonna be the single most recommendable laptop on earth. So there's a catch, right? Well, yes and no, we'll get there, but first there's actually two versions of the Neo. 256GB with just a lock button for $599 and 512GB with Touch ID for $699. And I had this thought, making a cheap MacBook is basically like playing a game of Jenga. To get the price down and still keep their $1,000 plus MacBooks attractive, Apple has to pull some blocks, aka cut features. The trick being to pull just enough and carefully balancing the tower without making it collapse, aka without making a bad product. And the second you unbox the Neo, you realize Apple went out of its way to make this not feel like a budget laptop. It's packaged like any other MacBook, even down to the missing power adapter in the UK and EU. Everywhere else, you do still get a charging brick in the box. It's 20 watts. Just keep that in mind for a sec, we'll get back to it. Oh, and design-wise, Apple definitely keeps that non-budget feel alive. Edgy colors are finally back, plus the soft rounded edges make this MacBook feel friendly and playful. Oh, and the keyboard's actually faintly tinted in the color of the chassis. Although I can only imagine how quickly my filthy fingers will give this keyboard its own custom colorway over time. So what's the trade-off then? Bad build quality? Actually, no, because the entire body is aluminum and you can open the hinge one-handed with barely any wobble. Trust me when I say that this feels just like any other MacBook. And I have a feeling that's because Apple knows that at this price, you simply won't find another laptop with this kind of build quality. So that's the only place where they didn't make any compromises. That quickly changes with the display. Now, for starters, with 13 inches, it's the smallest screen of the MacBook lineup. And sure, it could do with some thinner bezels, but because of that, there's no notch, which ironically means you actually gain something the expensive MacBooks don't have. Extra menu bar space. Wow. Now, the panel itself reaches the same 500 nits as the double the price MacBook Air, plus the sharpness, so pixel density, is almost identical. So, not a single compromise on the display? Not quite. There's actually three things Apple left out. For starters, because Apple pulled the ambient light sensor, the Neo's display can't automatically adjust its brightness based on your surroundings, though it still changes brightness based on battery usage. This also means we're giving up True Tone, which normally lets the screen match the color temperature of ambient light. But also, the panel itself is standard sRGB, while other MacBooks use the wider P3 color space. The point being, just like buying a smaller box of crayons, you lose a few shades, though if you're anything like me, you won't notice. What's more, most of the internet is still made for sRGB anyway. This really only matters if you're doing design, video, or photography work professionally. But to actually get some work done, you might want to plug in an external monitor. The Neo supports one display at 4K 60Hz, which is where things get a bit curious, because we've never seen this on a Mac before. But watch what happens when we plug a display into one of these two USB-C ports. macOS is like, yeah. No. That's because we only get one USB 3 port that supports a display, bundled with a slow USB 2 port that doesn't. And since they're not labeled, Apple came up with this rather creative pop-up solution. Wow. The point being, there's no Thunderbolt, and if that USB 3 port is already driving your monitor, you're stuck with some fairly low transfer speeds on that USB 2 port. Though what I think is a bigger trade-off for people buying this MacBook is that there's no MagSafe charging, which might not sound like a big deal, but this laptop will live in a lot of classrooms, and if my school days taught me anything, is that somebody always trips over that charging cable. Speaking of which, there's no fast charging, and honestly, not a huge battery either. Apple rates it for 11 hours of web browsing, which is about a quarter less than the MacBook Air's rating. In fact, this is the smallest battery in the whole MacBook lineup. Sure, still great battery life for that price and better than most budget laptops, but with an insanely efficient iPhone chip sitting inside, this honestly feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to not push this even further. So yeah, the tower is starting to wobble just a little. So let's see if the A18 Pro chip and its performance is enough to make it collapse. Because we've never seen this before, but Apple literally took the A18 Pro chip from the iPhone 16 Pro, disabled one GPU core and dropped it straight into this MacBook. And sure, an iPhone chip powering a laptop sounds like a big compromise. But after testing this machine, the story is actually very different. Now, we must forget for a sec that this was born as a smartphone chip because the benchmarks are impressive. In both single and multi-core, this beats the M1 MacBook chip. Now, of course, benchmarks aren't real-world use, but it just shows that we need to get this smartphone chip bias out of our head. Because anything you can throw at an iPhone 16 Pro, which is a ton, you can throw at this MacBook too, with the added benefit of having better cooling because of much more space. Against what some tech bros say, you can absolutely do simple 4K video editing or multitasking on this machine. Plus, especially single-core tasks like opening apps or browsing the web is like on any other Mac. You won't notice a difference. So the chip isn't the problem. The bigger concern must be the 8 gigs of RAM, plus the slower memory bandwidth, which is less than half of the MacBook Airs. If you want to know exactly how much RAM you need, here's my guide on that. But with 8 gigs of RAM, just keep in mind that this was not built for crazy speed or performance. And it's also not the most future-proof. Because we've seen it many times, 16GB machines just last longer. But then again, this laptop costs $600. So even if you upgrade slightly sooner than you would with a MacBook Air, you're still spending about half as much today. Where Apple also seems to have spent about half as much is the webcam. It's back to 1080p, and we're missing features like...
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the...
center stage or desk view. But the camera quality itself is perfectly fine, and we're still getting software features like Edge and Studio Light, plus portrait mode and system level background replacement. Oh, and check this out, there's no green light anymore when the webcam's active. That's purely software now. Can't even picture how much money Apple saved with this. Now, I was actually pretty surprised when I tested the Neo's Trackpad, because for more than a decade now, every MacBook has used a haptic trackpad, meaning it doesn't physically move when you click. It just uses vibration to simulate the feeling of a click. This one doesn't. The Neo actually goes back to a mechanical trackpad, like on older MacBooks. Now, it still clicks across the whole surface and gestures work exactly like on any other MacBook, but because this is now a regular trackpad, we're also giving up force touch. Plus, you can't change the force needed to click. So if you're used to Apple's huge haptic trackpads, this definitely feels worse, and it takes much more effort to click. It instantly reminded me of the trackpad on the iPad's keyboard case. Feels almost identical. The keyboard, on the other hand, is exactly what you'd expect. It feels fantastic, and I honestly can't tell a difference from other MacBooks. But again, Apple pulled another block. Because this keyboard has no backlight, which might save a bit of cost and also removes the need for the ambient light sensor, but at this point it's such a basic feature that even budget laptops usually have it, and it makes working in any dim environment a lot harder. Moving on to the speakers, they sound good. In the budget space, you usually get downward facing speakers, so the sound just fires into the table and reflects back at you. Here, the stereo speakers face outward. They have quite a weird placement and they're not as impressive as on other MacBooks, but good for a budget laptop. Now, it's easy to overlook software in reviews like this, but with MacBooks, it actually matters more than you might think. Like, just for instance, on iPhones, the budget options often miss out on the fancy software features of the Pro models. But this MacBook obviously runs the exact same macOS as any other expensive Mac. The point being, there's basically nothing you can do on there that you can't do here, except things limited by raw performance. Plus, macOS basically looks just like iOS or iPadOS now. So because this MacBook is very much aimed at people new to the Mac, anyone who already owns an iPhone or iPad will feel right at home. Oh, and it's hard to not enjoy the small software details like folders and menus being tinted in the MacBook's color right out of the box. Even more important though, Apple basically guarantees years of software updates, which makes this $600 budget MacBook Neo an even better deal than it already is. And again, if you're still unsure about the 8 gigs of RAM in this thing, I'd recommend watching this video next, where we find out exactly how much RAM you actually need. Alright, I will see you there. Thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Still a good deal.